culture, by the attitude, like the American English and attitudes of Americans can be quite different from the English. So even the language, there is a statement about the thing that separates the British from the Americans is their common language. But language itself is not to be, when we just grasp concepts, no matter how sublime those concepts might be, or even in terms of worldly values wise, the ignorance is still there, the unawakened state of just operating from the conditioned plane without any reference, without any discernment, but just through conditioning. Language also, and the thinking process, is very dualistic. It has, if you have good, you have to have bad and right, then there's wrong, true, and then false, heaven and hell. And so on the level of trying to figure out things like Buddha used words that have no, that you can't imagine what they are, like the concept nibbana. This word is, what is it, and you're trying to imagine. And nowadays the word nibbana means the best, usually. You see, in all, like I've been in Australia, New Zealand, things like the Nirvana beauty salon or something like this. So, and so it usually is associated with bliss, happiness, or the very best, or a kind of heavenly state. But what the Buddha, you see, when the emphasis the Buddha made was not on this dualistic structure of nibbana as opposed, to have some opposite, but to realize nibbana is mean letting go of thoughts, of language, of our conditioned way of thinking through the cultural conditioning, to realize the ultimate reality, the deathless, the anatta Dhamma, the real. And that we can't, when you're trying to describe that or define it or analyze it, you just get your, brain in a twist. It just is impossible because it's beyond imagination. The Buddha used words like anatta and nibbana and shunyata. He used words like the unborn, uncreated, unformed, unconditioned. He used like the anatta Dhamma, deathless truth, deathless reality. And these words, they are, words, translation of Pali words into English words, but notice that the conditioned and the unconditioned, just taking these two words, the unconditioned is just a negation of conditions, but it has tried to imagine, tried to create an image of the unconditioned in your mind, and you can't do it. Your thinking process packs up. But it can create any condition, whether it's a fantasy or just a memory of, something like a chair or a table. But the conditioned realm has form, has color, has taste. It can, and then we can create conditions. We can create fantasies in our mind and manipulate conditions with ideas, images, true, false, right, wrong images, beautiful, ugly, whatever. But the unconditioned, unborn, we can't. And so the Buddha in his teaching was bringing us to the point where we see the futility and the suffering we create by our obsessive, blind attachment to conditions. And of course, modern society now is very much attached to the thinking process, to reason, logic, to try to analyze, criticize, to compare, beliefs in progress and how attachment to ideals, strong views, strong opinions about politics, economics, religion, philosophy, whatever. So these attachments, even if we're attaching to something very good, it still has its opposite, and it still binds us to the confusion that we create through this blind attachment. So the aim, it's been, in my lifetime, I became interested in Buddhism in 1955, when I was in the American Navy in Japan, came across Zen Buddhism. And so that was 1955 up to the present. I've seen, in 1955 there were hardly anybody had any interest, in terms of people I knew, other Americans, who had any interest whatsoever in Buddhism. It was not, something that was a part of our cultural expectation. It came to, a kind of fashionable, faddish interest in the 50s, 1950s, through the American occupation of Japan, cultural exchanges that were taking place. And from that, of course, it was the beginning, over 50 years, the kind of amount of interest that countries like the United States or the United Kingdom and European countries and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all these places, and even, in countries that you wouldn't expect any interest at all in Buddhism. There we get emails and seeking information or invitations to give retreats. And why is it that at this time there's this sudden interest and upsurge of interest in Buddha Dhamma? Because in terms of, say, Western attitudes about progress and evolution, Buddhism is a very old tradition. It's like, it's older than most other religions. And so it's, 2,552 years for us is a long, long time. And it can also be seen as something appropriate to ancient India. And what is it, why is it that, was there any interest in modern Malaya or in modern Britain, for example? And it's because it's a wisdom teaching that has survived through the various rising, falling civilizations that it's inevitably encountered in its past history and survived up to the present time. And it is not about ancient Indian religion or culture. The whole emphasis the Buddha made was on the common human experience that we can all relate to, is suffering. And so in this unique way of teaching, he brought attention to suffering, or in Pali, dukkha. It means this sense of dissatisfaction or a lack, or when even life at its best, there's still this dukkha, this suffering that we experience as human individuals, whether, whatever, if we're wealthy or poor, male or female, European, Asian, or whatever, it's the suffering is very much the same thing. And this using suffering or dukkha as a noble truth unique approach to religious and spiritual practice. And because it's not ultimate truth, it's not like the ultimate reality. It would be a very depressing kind of religion if we all just assumed everything's suffering and unsatisfactory in a kind of resigned way to misery. But it's putting suffering into consciousness so that we begin to observe it and be able to discern that which is aware of suffering isn't suffering. So it's a very direct way of pointing to reality always in the present, the timeless reality of now. And this of course, is now a teaching sought after in the Western world in a way that it was never even considered, or way most Western people, Europeans, Americans, could never really understand or appreciate such an approach until fairly recently. It was too bizarre, too different from our own to even be able to understand it, even on the intellectual level. Very few could really appreciate it until fairly recently. Now, over the past 50 years, there are so many Western people have practiced Buddhist meditation, taken on in various Buddhist traditions, that there are now quite, teachers, of European teachers who have insight and have knowledge that from the practice of Buddhism, where, say, 50 years ago there wasn't anyone that I encountered. And then when I went to Thailand in 1966, went there in order to find a teacher, because I certainly couldn't find any where I was living in the United States. So it wasn't through lack of trying. Didn't seem to be any there, or if they were, I didn't know where they were. So the aim of going to Asia was to search for a teacher that would teach me how to practice meditation. So that is why I, went to Thailand and became a Buddhist monk, and why I still am one, because obviously it was an effective teaching. And then the life of a Buddhist monk I quite enjoy. It's not it's a very good way to live one's life as a human individual. And it's something totally out of my expectation from my social, cultural background. I never thought my parents would have never have expected their son to be a Buddhist monk. But that's what's happened, and of course the result of this is a sense of gratitude to the Buddha, the traditional, the historical Buddha, and all the monastic Sangha that has supported this teaching through the centuries up to the present time, where I could encounter it and practice it. And of course that is exemplified in the figure of Luang Por Chah as the teacher that I encountered, that I found, that I felt a great affinity with, and could really trust and consider his way of living, his own behavior, and the way he taught us. So this is a time now it is very heartwarming to see here in Malaya the amount of interest now, because when I first came to Malaysia in 1964, there wasn't anything like this happening. And so I feel very inspired by this brief visit to Malaya this time, here in Kuala Lumpur and in Penang for 2 nights, and to see the growing interest in this wisdom teaching, because it is something that is that I've found that I can wholeheartedly recommend. That it is an effective tool to use for freeing oneself from ignorance and the suffering that we create in our minds. So I wish to express my gratitude and appreciation for all those involved, to Thien Ma and all the people who joined in making this day possible, because it is the day in Thailand that is the Memorial Remembrance Day in Ubon at the monastery, Luang Por Chah's monastery, and the Sangha tends to collect there on the 16th of January every year, and I usually try to attend the meeting there every year, going from England to Thailand intentionally to attend this Memorial Day, Remembrance Day. And in Wat Pah Pong, it's usually a week before the 16th of January. It starts with a kind of retreat, meditations, and as the people assemble and Luang Por Chah's disciples gather. And it's something that always, something I feel is worthy to do, because to have this sense of gratitude for a teacher is a very, it brings joy into one's own mind. And the monastic life itself leads to, if lived properly, leads towards gratitude and contentment. And nowadays, contentment is a virtue that hardly anyone recognizes, because the society is determined to keep us totally discontented. And so the economy will develop. If you're all contented, the economy as we know it would collapse. So we have to be discontented and always want something, the newest thing, the newest model, the latest design. And so modern materialism, free-market capitalism and so forth is designed to make us want things and be discontented. And the monastic life, as the Buddha established it in this traditional form, is leading towards contentment with very few things. And so contentment is also a very peaceful mental experience. To be content is a tranquil experience. Contentment, gratitude, these are the foundations of the holy life, of spiritual development. Just trying to through your own willpower, attain Nibbana, it's impossible. No matter how clever you might be. It's through letting go and through these simple reflections to bring contentment and gratitude and peacefulness. And the true nature of our consciousness is that, in which we begin to not struggle anymore in the kind of mindless way that one used to struggle, because that's all one had done in one's life, was to keep struggling to compete and develop and get something you don't have yet, or get rid of the things that you have you don't like. So now I will end this reflection, and my gratitude, appreciation for all the care and attention and hard work that went into making this event possible. We have Ajahn Yanadammo come from Thailand, and Ajahn Chandiko came all the way from New Zealand, Ajahn Charamano from Germany, and all assembled here, and other monks from many other places here in Kuala Lumpur on the 16th of January 2010. So I wish to give you all my best wishes and blessings, and encourage your interest and practice of the Dhamma, the teaching of the Buddha.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
One of the beautiful traditions in our greater tradition is this tradition and ceremony of asking for forgiveness. Because whenever we leave a particular situation, when we leave a monastery, when we depart from a great teacher, then even if we feel that it's been a wonderful, inspiring time, it is good just to reflect, is there anything that I have done through body and speech or mind that could have in any ways been a cause for stress or suffering or dukkha in some form to arise? And so we go through this process of asking for forgiveness. Anything that we've done either intentionally or unintentionally, in something that we've actually physically done, or something that we've said, or maybe it's even just a mental state, a thought, either in public or in private. We ask for forgiveness, and in turn our teachers forgive us out of compassion. So on this day, whatever teachers that you have had in your lives, and we can include them in the ceremony. To begin with, we will, if you could join me in the Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Okay, now please repeat after me. Acharye Pamadena Dwaratayena Gatang Sabang Aparadang Kamatu no Bante Acharye Pamadena Dwaratayena Gatang Sabang Aparadang Kamatu no Bhante Acharye Pamadena Dwaratayena Gatang Sabang Aparadang Kamatu no Bhante. And then to conclude this evening, whatever merit, whatever good karma has been generated through all of the wholesome actions throughout the day, then let's consider sharing them with those people who are important in our lives, those people who have been teachers to us, those beings who support our Dhamma practice, and all beings everywhere. So we can chant in the English version of sharing of merit. Begins with, through the goodness that arises from our practice. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge, unsurpasses the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Okay. We'll then conclude with paying respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddham Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavanta Namo Dhammam Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
We have now completed the Ajahn Chah Remembrance Day. The Ajahn Chah Remembrance Day is a way of remembering Sangha. We have remembrance of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. And when we remember monks who have practiced well, practiced correctly, practiced rightly, practiced for the liberation from all suffering, then is the recollection of the noble ones, recollection of the community of bhikkhus who have practiced appropriately according to the Buddha's teachings. And this event has been a very successful event. It's the first time that it had been held here in Malaysia, and it was held on the same day as the same event on the 16th of January in Thailand at Wat Nong Prapong Ajahn Chah's monastery. And the numbers of people who came to assist in the preparation and then came also to take part in the events. And all the events were around the practice of Dhamma. And those numbers of people were very large and very impressive to see the amount of interest in Buddhist practice in one's life in this country now. And we hope that it gave people a taste of how to apply the Buddha's teachings in daily life, because that is essentially what Ajahn Chah was trying to point to, that we turn the Dhamma into a tool for liberation in our own lives. And this Dhamma is a very powerful tool. It was a tool which is the inheritance of the Buddha. And if we take that inheritance and use it wisely, then we can greatly benefit ourselves and others from that inheritance. Just like if our parents leave us an inheritance, some wealth, and then we use that wealth for our own benefit, but also for the goodness in the world, then that inheritance is used wisely as a resource for not only bringing happiness to oneself and happiness to others. So too the inheritance of the Buddha is the teachings of the Dhamma. And if we use that skillfully and wisely and well, then that can bring great blessings to ourselves and great blessings to this world.
Sahagathena cetasa ekam disam paritava viharati tata dutiyam tata tatiyam tata chatutang ityudamato tiriyang sabati sabatataya sabavantang lokam metta Sahagathena cetasa vipulena mahagathena apamanena averena abhyapachena Haritava Viharati Karuna Sahagathena cetasa Ekam disam Haritava Viharati Tata dutiyam Tata tatiyam Tata chatutang Ityudamato ทิริยังสาปาติสาปาทัทธายาสาปาวันทังโลคังคารุณาสหกเทนะเชทัสสะวิปุเลนะมหกเทนะอัปปมาเนนะอเวเรนะอเบยภาเจนะปริตวาวิหารติมุเดธาสหกเทนะเชทัสสะเอคังดิสังหริตวาวิหารติทัทธาดุทิยังทัทธาทัตถิยังทัทธาทัตถุทังอิติยุตามะโตทิริยังสาปาติสาปาทัทธายาสาปาวันทังโลคังมุเดธาสหกเทนะเชทัสสะวิปุเลนะมหกเทนะอัปปมาเนนะอเวเรนะอเบยภาเจนะภริตวาวิหารติอุเบกขาสหกเทนะเชทัสสะเอคังดิสังหริตวาวิหารติทัทธาดุทิยังทัทธาทัตถิยังทัทธาทัตถุทังอิติยุตามะโตทิริยังสาปาติสาปาทัทธายาสาปาวันทังโลคังอุเบกขาสหกเทนะเชทัสสะวิปุเลนะมหกเทนะอัปปมาเนนะอเวเรนะอเบยภาเจนะภริตวา